Here at Autocar India, we try our best to bring you new car reviews first and as fresh as possible. And sometimes that means going that extra mile. So, after getting a good look at the new 4th generation BMW X5 at its gala launch event in Mumbai, what I did was stuck around till the very end. I think you can see where this is going. We're starting to make a habit of this, you know. Yup, once again BMW was kind enough to let us drive off with their brand new car straight from the show floor itself. And we were more than happy to take them up on the offer. What it meant, of course, was that we could get right to the job of testing it first thing the following morning. The new X5 and I escaped the city limits bright and early the next morning and made for the outskirts of Mumbai. I've actually been out driving for some time now, and I've got to say it's been quite an enjoyable experience for a number of different reasons, some of which you might not expect. Let's start though with the ones you do expect, and fittingly, I'm on a bit of a twisty road in a BMW. So what I should do now is put it into sport mode, give it a bit of a whirl. Now you got to remember it was 20 years ago that the X5 started this trend of sporty SUVs, or rather SAVs, sports activity vehicles like BMW likes to call them. It was the very first 4x4 SUV shape car as we know it today that was more geared to driving on the road rather than off it. Sure, it could do a little bit of off-roading stuff, but it was a BMW at heart. Others followed, of course, and now it's a whole sub-segment of its own. So what is it about the X5 that's always made it so much fun? Well, it's kind of similar to most BMWs. A good steering, a solid chassis, and excellent body control. That's a bit of a point of contention with this new X5 because for the first time it has air suspension, not just at the back axle but at the front as well. But I've got to say it hasn't dampened things too much because at least in sport mode, body control is still really rather good. Okay, it has softened up just a little bit, but I'd still say it handles better than most other cars of this class and of this size. The steering is perhaps not quite as quick or sharp as some other BMW cars, but that's okay in an SUV like this. It's a big car, you need a little leeway, otherwise it would be a little too twitchy for something this massive. And let's not forget, this is no M Sport version or an all-out M car. This is just the standard X5. Pushing along this massive SUV today is 265 horsepower and 620 Newton meters courtesy of a 3-litre straight-six diesel. The powertrain is actually perhaps the most familiar part of the X5 formula, and that's because we've seen it before in a number of other BMWs. Back as ever is the excellent ZF 8-speed automatic gearbox. It seems to improve just a little bit with every application. And here too, hammering along in sport mode, it's making a nice little rumble. And I'm happy to say it still has that strong mid-range kick we love so much about BMW diesels. The quick gearbox, all-wheel drive and that huge reserve of torque make light work of the X5's 2.1-ton curb weight. And strapped to our V-Box testing equipment, it clocked a 0 to 100 kph time of just 6.55 seconds. In rolling acceleration for overtaking, 20 to 80 kph was dealt with in less than 4 seconds, and 40 to 100 in less than 5. But here's the thing, here's what happens when you put it down from sport mode into comfort mode again. That nice little roar is all gone. In fact, pretty much all noise from the engine is gone. It's just so much more refined this time around. I mean, the old X5 also had a 3-litre straight-six diesel, but that was definitely far more audible in the cabin than in this car. So yeah, it might have gone a little bit softer, but it still errs more on the BMW side of the driving spectrum. And that means it's more fun to drive than most rivals. In fact, it's only something like a Porsche Cayenne that does it better, and that is high praise indeed. But that's not the most impressive change in this 4th generation G05 BMW X5. One of the biggest improvements on this new X5 has got to be how much more plush this new interior is. Just look at this lovely open pore wood. It feels so natural and so nice, and there's loads of brushed aluminium everywhere. Even the door handles are brushed aluminium. It all just feels very, very regal, very, very upmarket. There's even double stitched leather on the dashboard top, and these big leather chairs, they're vastly adjustable and very, very comfortable. It's also very practical. Loads of storage. There's a little bay down here, massive bin over here, and huge door pockets. They've also equipped it with a panoramic sunroof, which is standard across the range, by the way. And of course, there's this massive new 12.3-inch iDrive touchscreen. It's got gesture control and of course the vast array of control options for the iDrive system. That iDrive system, incidentally, is the latest version, and though it looks quite a bit different now, it remains one of the quickest, sharpest and easiest systems to use. The new X5 is loaded with equipment too, especially this X-Line variant, and apart from what we've discussed so far, you'll also find 360-degree cameras, 4-zone climate control, a 464-watt Harman Kardon audio system, wireless phone charging, soft closed doors, Apple CarPlay, but no Android Auto, configurable ambient lighting and more. You'll also find BMW's new digital dials, which look cool but are difficult to read on the move on account of the actual needles being too small to see clearly. It's quite distracting, and simpler, brighter dials would have just worked better. There are a few more things I'm not a huge fan of on this interior, like the rather ordinary looking central AC vents and this cut glass finish for the gear lever and iDrive wheel. Some might find it unique to look at, but in the afternoons, it reflects the sun right into your eyes. And while we're stopped, we might as well take in some of that new gen BMW styling. Here's the thing about the X5, it's quite a bit larger than its predecessor, 36mm longer, 15mm taller, and a solid 66mm wider in fact. But it just doesn't look it from a distance. It's only when it's standing right next to you that you realize how massive it actually is. That's because of the sharp lines and muscular skinning of the bodywork, as well as the exaggerated details like the angular headlamps, which have laser light high beams incidentally, and yes, that grille. The single-piece chrome unit has truly gotten immense, but spend a little bit more time with the car and it grows on you. I'm not such a big fan of the tail lamps, which look a bit too generic and seem to be missing that BMW L-shaped signature, but overall I think it's a handsome and powerful design. And thanks to air suspension, you can easily flick it from hunkered down M-car to jacked up off-roader with ease. But what completes the stance are those 20-inch wheels and wider rear tires. How wide? 305 section, the same as a Lamborghini Huracan. But just what do you think about the way the new X5 looks? Let us know down in the comments. Round the back you'll find the X5's characteristic split tailgate. It opens to reveal a 650-litre boot, underneath which sits a space-saver spare tire. And if you want more space still, the seats fold down to give you 1,860 litres. You will note, however, that you no longer get the pair of tiny third-row seats as you did on some variants of the old X5. This one is a strict 5-seater, likely to make more room for the bigger X7. But that's not such a bad thing because the second row is rather good. The first sensation you get is of spaciousness, and that's not down just to the space that's on offer, although there is plenty as you can see. It's also down just to how airy the cabin feels, and that's even though I've got the sunroof closed at this point. It feels incredibly wide and the dashboard feels like it's in another postcode right now. It's also incredibly plush back here. There's more of that unpolished wood veneer and these nice big speaker grills for the Harman Kardon audio system. And now there's 4-zone climate control, so I have 2 settings for the back seat as well. The seat back is a little bit upright. I personally prefer it this way, but I can see how some people would like to lounge a little bit more in the back seat, and unfortunately the seat does not recline. Now, I mentioned refinement before, and that is even more evident back here. This car is just so quiet, and this is the diesel version, let me remind you. The other thing that's an absolute sea change compared to the previous X5 is the ride. The air suspension at both ends this time around has really done wonders. It has got that floaty luxury car feel. Yes, the car is in comfort mode now, but as it should be when you're being chauffeured around. If there's one thing you can feel in the backseat over here, it's the tires, the massive, massive tires. It's not just that they make a bit of noise at speed, it's also that they tend to make the car wobble a bit over an uneven surface. It's not a deal breaker, but you can feel it. It's also reasonably practical back here with really big bottle holders, a pair of cup holders in here, a flat little storage space down here, and a little niche to store your phone underneath the AC controls. There's even USB-C ports to charge your device on the back of each of these chairs. The new BMW X5 costs 72.9 lakh rupees, but that's for the sport model. This fully loaded X-Line model will cost you 82.4 lakh rupees ex-showroom. And yes, that's quite a lot for what is essentially still a 5-seat luxury SUV, and more so when you consider this car is locally assembled. But then you've got to think what all more you are getting for your money with this new X5, especially in the luxury department. Not only is it bigger and more spacious, the air suspension at all four corners gives it a vastly improved ride. It's also more refined, and the appointments and equipment on the inside are almost on the same level as a 7 Series. Then you've got to consider BMW's SUV range. Between the X3 and the X5 is now the X4. There will soon be an X7, and between them will also come the X6. So what's basically happened is that the game has changed. The segments have moved, and this has gone up, yes, in price, but it's also gone up in the amount of car that you get for your money. It is expensive, yes, but then the value proposition has changed too, and frankly, it's a much better car for it. And when Mercedes launches its new GLE, that's a showdown you should all be looking forward to.